Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back, podcast 13, and thank you for having us. My main man, Chris, done a bit of things at home, sorted himself out. That's why we got ourselves a studio. I feel kind of bouge. Me in a studio, this little city rat.
Well, it's time we upgraded.
Just a little bit. Thank you all for coming back. Thank you all for being with us through this journey. The British politicians are ending up going to fucking hate us because we always have something to complain about. As always, I'm Sean, Yahya, or the Irish Muslim, depending on who you're asking. This is Chris. We're happy to have you here for our 13th podcast. Chris is going to kick off today. He's got a rather important subject about winter fuel payments.
Yes, lovely. The pensioners have compiled stuff to go against the courts to overturn the action of the winter fuel payment. I think that's a fantastic move. Because I don't know why they were cutting it in the first place, because you're all a bunch of morons, just because you want to scrimp and save every penny and screw over the elderly.
To be quite fair, I understand the economical necessity of trying to make savings, but you don't need to fuck your elderly and you don't need to fuck your farming, and that's what Rachel Reeves has done. And she's not what I would call a competent Chancellor. She's the fall girl for when Keir Starmer messes up. The Labour wants to make some policy changes. They want to shake up the economics. They want to slim down government spending, and they want to be seen as a centralist party. I don't like it. Personally, I think that they should do more about caring for society and the people who actually vote for them, and stop caring. I mean, later on, we're going to be discussing the peace agreement between Donald Trump, Vladimir Putin, and what's going on in Ukraine. And I think that's a positive thing. I'm a big critic of Donald Trump. We'll talk about that later. But these are the things that where the Prime Minister externally does well. The problem being he's left Rachel Reeves to do internal things. Now, he gets a few things right, and we're going to discuss those as we go through the podcast today. But in essence, Rachel Reeves has missed this one up, and she keeps missing them up. You know what I'm saying? I mean, the PPI. That's another thing that's going through Parliament that the parliamentarians have turned around and said that they're not having none of it. If you know what is going on, they're looking to cut the welfare benefit. Now, I agree with that.
Yeah, that's the other thing I wanted to mention.
I agree with that to the non-working, adults who can work. The people who are fucking disabled, that means test has to be protected. These are the most vulnerable people of society. You are, as a civilization, judged by your weakest members. So how we treat our prisoners, how we treat our criminals, how we treat our disabled is a very critical point of how we reflect as a society of Britain.
And the elderly.
Absolutely the elderly. Absolutely the bloody elderly. And I'm glad they've made a legal challenge. And I'm glad that the judge has basically kicked off about it. And Rachel Reeves is probably going to go into the court by begging not for her policy to be crashed. But honestly, it needs to be, because these are common sense points of view. You need to realise that the current economical system, and I know Sean's always banging on about the bloody tax system, but it is. That's the fucking problem. None of these politicians want to take the bull by the horns. You've got to change the tax system.
None of them have got the cojones to actually do it.
I told you, that's why we have to go to politics. Because it has to be. I see it as inevitable, because it is one of the greatest griped positions. If that walking wound, Nigel Farage, can yammer on about immigrants all the fucking time, and still that cunt can get elected to Parliament, I can do something that actually benefits the Britons and say tax systems need to be reformed to benefit you, me, and the elderly, and the poor and the weak.
Benefit everybody.
Exactly. That's the thing. But the corporations don't want it.
Because they don't want to pay it.
Yeah, because it's 100,000 fucking pages of tax. And if she's not willing to tackle that, she has to nitpick around these small items that are going to harm society. There is no reason for pulling out the winter fuel tax. The pensioners were absolutely right to take it to court. It's one of those things I fundamentally, irrevocably stand by. In fact, I think that the reality we sit on is that Rachel Reeves doesn't quite understand that society won't tolerate certain things. And attacking the elderly is not one of them. Attacking the young...
I'm going to say she's finding it out right now as
she's
getting dragged into court.
Of course. And the court are going to rule in favour of the elderly. You know they are. You know they're going to fight, move towards the elderly. It's just common sense.
And you damn well know it's going to be like a 60-year-old plus judge that's going to do it.
All of our judges are over 50.
So he's going to turn around and go...
They're my age group. I'm rich enough I can pay for my shit.
You're taking the mick out of my generation, you can go bugger off.
Yeah, exactly. He's going to. He or she will destroy them. You know, it'll be a boomer sat behind the fucking goddamn judge table. She's buggered. She's buggered this one up. The winter fuel tax raid was a mistake. And it just puts another nail in Rachel Reeves' coffin, because the woman is rampantly incompetent. But that doesn't mean Keir Starmer is. Because...
And that's something we never thought we'd say.
Yeah, I don't like the bloke. I really don't like him. He's a bit too slimy and less British-centric. I think he is an international trotter. He did very well, as we mentioned in podcast 12, about the international diplomacy, how he's got Donald Trump to behave himself, the raving fucking megalomaniac. And let's be fair, Trump is a maniac.
I was going to say, I was quite disturbed of a headline I saw on one of the papers, that he will invade Russia if needs be. I was like, oh, great.
Fucking hell. Great,
that's World War III on doorsteps, people, if he decides to do that.
Me. And then there's that shit about him wanting to annex Greenland. Little Greenland, with a population smaller than the city that we live in our region. And we're not, where we are in Britain, it's not a big part. I've got to tell you that. Our city is quite small, it's a cattle market city, but it's bigger than the population of Greenland. So it's clear that this man is off on a power trip. There's no question about that. And I don't know how the Americans brought that kind of man to power. Yes, he has some positive things about ending wars, but he's also someone who is grasping at land. He wants to take Panama, he wants to take... Talking about fucking turning Canada into the 51st state. I mean, that's just not going to work. That's going to horrifically collapse America if they even try that.
I could say, I'm sure Canada, even though they're quite polite...
The Canadians, the rest of the Commonwealth would respond. Yeah. Do you know what I'm saying? Ignore what the British politicians will do. Britons will not tolerate it. They'll go off in their 10s and 20s and 30s, and some in their 100s, to go and help the Canadians. You know that there'll be the other parts of the Commonwealth that will do the same. It's an ugly scenario that if he tries to militarily take Canada, it's going to end in a fucking disaster. And unfortunately, you have to talk about it, because it's the thing that's only just recently, it keeps coming up. Every other fucking week, Donald Trump's making a quote about, Canada's going to be the 51st state. No, it isn't. Let's be real about this, America. It's not going to be the 51st state. But getting back to Britain and our own interests, Keir Starmer's getting rid of the NHS England. The actual bureaucracy.
Don't say be specific on that.
But yeah, the bureaucracy. I was in shock. It was like he was actually doing something sensible.
He's getting rid of the paper pushers.
10,000 jobs of them. 10,000.
Think how much smoother the NHS will run now they haven't got 60 million people to go through.
I know. Hospital chief executives once described NHS as the biggest kiss-up, kick-down organisation in public life. That's a brilliant quote, because that really does. The comment came to mind when Health Secretary Wes Sterling on Thursday said the scrapping of the NHS would end the infantilisation of frontline NHS leaders. Time and again, NHS trusts have complained about the total control that the National Health Service of England, the body responds for the day-to-day running of the health services in the country, excessing over their actions, the lack of freedom they had to either showcase their good work or respond to particular challenges. You won't find many people shedding a tear over its demise, said one NHS officer from a senior hospital.
So basically, he's getting rid of the red tape so people can actually do their job
Absolutely. The NHS England is a massive quango. It's a huge bureaucracy. Somewhere I read that it had up to 10,000 employees, both part-time and full-time. And it will save Britain billions that we can plough back into the NHS that isn't going to a bloody bureaucrat. I absolutely support this. And I don't like Starmer. Let's be fair, Chris. You know I'm not a fan of this motherfucker. But these are the things that he's actually doing well.
Actually doing something correct.
Yeah, no, I'm got to touch wood.
That's getting rid of the paper pushers, which then will free up the budget to actually hire more nurses, so they're not understaffed.
Now he better fucking spend that money back on the NHS, because that'll fucking infuriate me.
Yeah.
And people like me and Chris will say we will watch that like a hawk. Because hospital waiting times are horrific.
Yeah, Mr. Starmer, you best turn around and switch those job positions up to actual nursing positions.
Nurses, doctors, orderlies, everything the hospitals need in manpower. Yeah? You've just taken 10,000 part-time and full-time work.
Or even if it's you split it half, so half manpower then half on improving
Yeah.
equipment and infrastructure, that's fine as well. But if you just turn around, cut it, and then run off with the money, we'll be chasing you.
Oh, absolutely. This is something you can hold our podcast to. We will keep an eye on this NHS spending point. We will watch how he operates, because as far as I'm concerned, this is both a positive thing, but I don't want it to be a money raid that the Prime Minister's taking from one part of our NHS and then running off with it to do other things with. And though I know our country needs infrastructure, this is why you have to reform the tax system. This is why the tax system needs to be reformed. I know I continually go on about it, but the inquiry that we have about the NHS England has been going since 2013. That they were concerns about the maintenance maternity services. Despite this, the safety structure within the NHS did not see the trust as being a problem, and much of the trusts that are involving the fall of that maternity, this is going back to the Lucy, you remember I mentioned last podcast,
Yes.
the young lady who died. Well, NHS England had the opportunity to stop that, and this is one of the investigations that they've had about it. So, in essence, the institutions that we have in the patients and the scandals and the problems that NHS England has done, taking it out round the back of the sheds and putting it down like a sickly fucking dog, in my opinion, is the right thing to do. The organisation is absolute waste of money. And I think it was a Tory idea to showcase it as a waste of money so that they could keep privatising. What we need now is to deprivatise what's been privatised in the NHS.
No, we need to bring it back under our control.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is what the Tories didn't want: control of the NHS. They wanted it to fail, but without taking the blame for it. And we can blame David Cameron. David Cameron was responsible for creating NHS England. He is directly responsible for it. He is the architect of that horrific thing back in the 2010s.
So literally set it up to make the NHS fail.
Absolutely.
And
so that they could sell it off.
Now Stemmer's come along going, no, I'm getting rid of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And as long as that money is churned back into the NHS, fantastic. That's a positive one to the Prime Minister. And
not a bit of it, frigging all of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Even if it's infrastructure to the NHS, and then half of it is nursing, as my colleague said, I think that's the right way, the right path to move forward, in my opinion. But I do have a problem with the way that these politicians tend to hide how they move the money around. I think we need more scrutiny about the how our tax money is paid. You don't think?
Definitely. Reform the tax system, then we want to know where you're spending the bloody money.
Yeah.
If it's going into your back pocket, it's called...
No. Look, the British politicians are corrupt. I am not at that point where I believe they're pocketing millions themselves. I'm not a conspiracy theorist. But I do believe that their incompetence and their mates in certain businesses are being given lucrative contracts. That's the kind of corruption Britain deals with. Oh, Jeremy over there owns a business. We could just slip him a job, slip him a couple of hospitals to look after. That's the way the fucking Conservatives are. And that's what we need to be wary of. The micro-privatisation of the NHS, nibble here, nibble there, nibble here, needs to stop. It genuinely does. And I fundamentally have a problem with that ways, and we need to reverse that. We need to do more than just dismiss NHS England. We need to get back where we go buy and sell our PPE. We need to let the British hospitals in bulk purchase order. We need the British hospitals to be able to get their equipment that aren't privatised. We need to bring both the waiting times down and the cost of our NHS. And there is some kind of cult around the NHS in some regards that say you can't do anything to it. There is a modernisation that has to be taken into effect, and we do need to understand the cost of that. But the cost must be balanced by the fact that we have not got in my opinion, I think the tax system doesn't work. It doesn't work for me and you. If our podcast was making us millions, Chris, it would start working for us. But until our podcast makes us bare dollar, it's not working for me and him, because we hold down full-time jobs, both of us. We're not. This is a part-time thing for us, especially for all of our viewers who tune in and watch our videos. We do deeply appreciate you. All 264 of you now. 264.
It's climbing. Keep coming, people.
Keep coming. We got the soul of the earth.
We'll gladly voice your concerns.
And again, if you ever got questions, you ever come to this part of the podcast, and actually people who actually get this far in the podcast, because there aren't many. You know, there's probably a dozen, 2 dozen who make it about halfway down all the way to the end, because most people watch us for the first couple of minutes, which we understand. You know, that can come as a normal kind of perception. But the reality hasn't changed. Our system needs a reboot. Britain needs to force a reboot of both our tax and our political system. And I stand by the premises that our tax system, and more importantly, the way we do business in Britain in general, I think we need to move government officials away from business. Big business. I'm not talking about normal, you know, I go into a special...
have their performance reviewed by an external company that's...
No, you can't... No. You need it... If you're going to do a review of British politicians, you need it to be by the public. Do you know what I'm saying? I think if we're going to talk about those levels of reforms, we can really see. I've got a list of reforms that I wanted to get on with in today's podcast in the electoral system. Proportionate representative is absolutely necessary. We need to shift from the first past the post system. A PR system is a single transferable vote or mixed member proportion to ensure vote translations more fairly into society and into seats. Basically, one man and one vote doesn't apply in Britain. And I know many people find that rather weird when we talk about democracy, but one man, one vote doesn't actually apply, because it's the first person who gets past the threshold wins the seat. So I'll give you an example. Me and Chris, he's standing for the Conservatives. I know he wouldn't, because today's Conservatives are scum to when we were kids. He's thinking he has this dreamy view of when physical financial conservatism was the thing and you were a compassionate human being.
I start my own bloody
So, I mean, Chris is the Conservatives, I'm the Liberal Democrats. We're trying to get voted in our hometown. I'm a passionate kind of a person. I get the outspoken minors, but Chris, being a Conservative, gets the inside votes. They're the people who traditionally work. As soon as Chris reaches a threshold, let's say 12,000 seats, and I'm only in 11,000, he is the elected MP. That's the problem. It's not who wins the most votes, popular votes or otherwise, it's the person who crosses the threshold. And that's the fundamental problem with the first past the post system. The FPTP is not fit for purpose in a modern society. It doesn't work for you and me. And it works for insiders, group voting, it works for, I've always voted Tory, I've always voted Labour. I voted for all three major parties. I voted for both the party that I consider myself more aligned to, the Liberal Democrats today. I've voted for the Conservatives when I was younger. I've voted for the Labour. I've even canvassed for all three of them. But the reality sits in front of you. The system that we have as a vote is falling apart, Britain. It's genuinely falling apart. And the reason it's falling apart is because people are disingenuous, people are disconnecting, and we need to reconnect our country. Because after apathy, because apathy is worse than death, I'm telling you that now, apathy is far worse than death, Chris. What we need is to inspire people to want to take seriously their democracy and be willing from the ground upwards to want to change Britain. What do you think of a compulsory voting system, where it's mandatory for people to vote?
I think that'd actually be more beneficial.
You see, there's a two-edged knife. There's a compulsory voting system in Australia. The mandatory voting could increase democratic participation, but it would also lead to resentment, because you don't want to be fined, that's why you're voting. You're not voting because you're engaged. See, that's one of the problems with compulsory voting. And I'm not saying compulsory voting is absolutely a good thing. I'm saying it is a reform that we should at least examine and look at the pros and cons. We should reform the House of Lords. I am of the opinion of abolishing it, let alone replacing it with experts. The House of Lords is a mix. It sits as both hereditary lords, which are very few in number nowadays, I'll give them that, and cronies, Labour and Tory and Liberal Democrat cronies that are voted up there to keep the party's power base in place. And we need to get rid of all them. The cronyism needs to go. We need the House of Lords should be a body of experts, people like ex-lawyers who are retired and want to do something a week on a couple of days of the week because they're in the retirement age, or ex-doctors, or actual physical specialists, people who know what the fuck they're doing, should be in the House of Lords. We don't have that at the moment. What we have is
I can understand that, experts in the thing, because they've been trained properly.
Where they say we don't agree with this law
because they've more likely gone through, gone up the ladder from base, from where we are, and will understand what the people want.
Absolutely. So, I mean, the fundamental, I'm going to give you an example, is under the current House of Lords system, if the Commons votes that they want to give certain criteria to certain type of building companies, that goes up to the House of Lords, even if one or two ex-master builders, let's say bricklayers or whatever the jobs is, or electricians, say this doesn't look quite right, they could be overrun by the cronies. The cronies say, get together and say, no, the House of Lords will support their party back in Parliament, etc., and the law is passed. Now, if that was a room full of actual building electrical engineers and plumbers, retirees of those ranks, and they go, this doesn't work, and this is why it doesn't look right, and we'll send it back to Parliament, and the opposition will likely read that out, and that will make the pressure on government to reform the system of law that they've sent up. That is the balance and checks. The problem being is the House of Lords does not operate like that. It's what it's supposed to operate, but it doesn't. It just doesn't.
It used to operate like that.
No. The House of Lords has gone from ultra corrupt actual landlords who were looking after their interests when they were invented. I don't even know when the House of Lords came into place. I'm pretty sure it was involving the reforms that the King agreed to. Let me look that up. Rules works. The House of Lords does not make laws. They directly challenge actions of government. They provide a form of independent expertise. They don't. Okay, this is the boilerplate of what Parliament says they're supposed to do. They don't. They're quite often held up by lots and lots of cronies. Spends about 60% of its time on legislation. The other 40% is spent on scrutinising, questioning government and debating issues and policies committees work to take places during or outside the chamber. See, the House of Lords has been around since we had landlords. People vast like Count so-and-so and Duke so-and-so, they would sit in the House of Lords. And the House of Commons became the more powerful parliamentary position and eventually gained sovereignty over the kingdom, the nation and its king. Because the king is a vassal and sworn allegiance to, I think, from Parliament, and the Commons does the same. So Parliament is sworn to the king is sworn to Parliament, and Parliament acts as the sovereignty involving the law of the land that we are creating. The House of Lords is supposed to scrutinise it. It does not necessarily work like that. Let's say the Conservatives are in power and they want a special bill passed so they can get their mates a new business job from government contract. The House of Lords will rubber stamp that. That is absolutely normal. It has to be something big for the House of Lords to actually rebel against. We haven't had many examples, good examples.
For example, us putting in the thing to reform the tax system, they'll probably turn around.
Yeah.
They'll kick off on that.
I mean, the government has been defeated in the House of Lords, but it's not a common thing. Like one of the biggest ones was in 2021 and 2022, where 129 lords revolted from the Conservative Party, I might add, and rejected an entire bill passed up. They don't tell us what the bill was, but they make very clear that the revolt was so large that government had to water it down to stop another revolt if it went back, because it doesn't look good on government when the House of Lords rebels. I don't actually know what that bill was because it doesn't let me say. It just says the number of defeats, and that's one of the largest, which was like 3 years ago. Yeah, what was going on 3 years ago that had the House of Lords rebel? So, I mean, we've had examples where the House of Lords have been dissolved, like ancient time, going back hundreds of years. 1649, the House of Commons abolished the House of Lords. That led towards a civil conflict that had the House of Lords and the landlords themselves with their armies fight the common man, and we had another fucking civil punch-up. But the reality is the House of Lords has been losing power time and time again, and the idea that we don't have a true upper chamber or lower chamber, however you want to describe the House of Lords, We have a Commons where most of our fights go on, and we have a House of Lords that will stamp things if they have to, where government will just stuff them. I mean, Boris Johnson was an example for that. I take Boris Johnson as a key example. He stuffed the House of Lords with cronies to get all of his massive reformed items that he wanted through, which were deeply unpopular. And that is a key factorable position. I believe in abolishing the House of Lords. I think it should be a lower chamber of House of Representatives, of experts. I think the idea that the Lord Chamber, with all of its pageantry, it should be gone, the whole bloody thing. Just because I feel that it allows politicians, in the old sense, to continue maintaining it. If we do keep it, we should have a term of limit. There should be a fixed term of how long you can sit in the House of Lords. That should exist in the Commons anyway. I don't think anybody over 75 should be serving in the Commons. Nobody who is 75 has a care about me and you, let alone the generation below us, who me and you are trying to improve the lives of. Do you know what I'm saying? We care about what's below us. We haven't got our own children yet, but when we have them, we will even more care about what's going on below us. But a 75-year-old is just drifting. He's made it. Why is he in Parliament? Well, why is he making laws on behalf of people when his life expectancy is another 10, 15 years?
If anything, he should be retiring and enjoying this last 10, 15 years.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I fundamentally believe anybody in the House of Lords who's over 70 or the House of Commons should be automatically retired. There should be term limits and age limits to every position in the United Kingdom, because the elderly should not be making decisions for people in their 20s. A 70-year-old does not know how a 20-year-old lives. This is going to bite me in the arse one day. We're going to be that age. But I fundamentally find that, politically speaking, I should not be saying something at 75 that is going to affect a 15-year-old.
I'll remind you of this when you say this.
No, to be fair, I do. I still genuinely believe it. In this day and age, in today's society, you look at how disconnected most 70-year-olds are to British society. I mean, they're the people who go out in the streets and say, I want Britain white again. What the fuck are you on? Like I said, and they're the ones that boldly claim and say these things. They will unquestionably make those comments. And it's quite fucking scary. Some suggestions have involving Britain having a federal system, where England runs its own business, Northern Ireland, Scotland, Wales, and we have an English parliament. Like we have micro-parliaments, basically, running individual states. The only problem with that, and that's why I've got a problem...
That sounds more complicated than anything else.
Not just that, England represents a huge chunk of our population as the United Kingdom.
Yeah.
Scotland will not have enough money to run its menials without us. Nor will Wales, Northern Ireland absolutely won't. Do you understand? I know people don't like mentioning this, but neither Wales or Scotland or Northern Ireland would realistically be able to function in a modern European industrial nation to the level that England can. Because the bulk of the taxable wealth, and we are still the most taxed item in the entire fucking UK is England. You know, there's like 47 million of us in England. We're 3 times the size of Scotland, or 4 times. Hugely. Northern Ireland's got 2.5 million people tops.
Damn.
Yeah, it's tiny. Like you could fit the whole of Northern Ireland in London like 5 times. That's what I'm trying to get at. England is massive when you're talking about the United Kingdom. So a federal system I don't necessarily believe. But parliamentary procedures and accountability I think is absolutely necessary. Yeah. I think we need to have a strong recall system as well. And we need to strengthen the recall mechanism in the UK Parliament to make MPs more accountable to their constituencies. And unfortunately, the current recall ability is flawed. It's heavily flawed. It doesn't work. You have to be suspended for 10 days, and then the public can call you back. It's not automatically returned. Do you know what I'm saying? If you're suspended for 10 days, your constituency can then recall you to have a recount, a revote on your position. But it's not guaranteed. And that's a flawed system, in my opinion. I think the constituencies should have the absolute power, for whatever reason, to recall MPs after 60% of the constituency vote. 55 is too close to the edge. That's why I say 60. 60%. If 60% of your constituency say you get back here and we want a fucking revote, that's a guaranteed way, I think, of holding the MPs accountable, because you'll see a lot less wars. You'll see a lot less corruption, and you will start seeing a more fairer British society. If we were to make one parliamentarian reform, you want to reform the ability to recall your MPs, because then every MP is not just worried about who's going to campaign finance him, which billionaire is he going to suck up to, oh, I'll pass your tax reforms, old boy, I'm in this party, I don't need to worry about it. That's the general senses that they engage in, and I have a fucking problem with that. I have a problem with anybody who feels immune to the general populace, and I think that...
But you work for the general populace. So
no, theoretically, they don't necessarily, Chris.
Well, they represent the general populace, so they should be held accountable for what we want.
To be fair, the reason we should expand on our recall ability is they are the MPs fail to represent our constituencies. There is an excessive absenteeism within the valid reasons of our parliament. The parliamentarians regularly ignore the populace. I can name dozens of examples of that. Siobhan Bailey is a perfect example of the Conservative Party in Stroud. Directly, that's where our podcast is, if you're wondering. We're based now in a live studio in Stroud. I'm not bothered about telling people that, because obviously it's a public building. Before you give me that dirty look.
No, I know it's a public building.
The failure to represent... Siobhan Bailey is a perfect example in Stroud. She ignored every question sent to her about Boris Johnson's behaviour. And there was big backlash, even in the Conservative Party, which I at the time was a member of. There was considerable backlash with Siobhan Bailey, who completely ignored all questions involving her party leader, the Prime Minister. She refused to question him, even when he was doing things that were very detrimental towards the countryside effects, because Gloucestershire, where me and Chris live, is a very country-based society. You know, the farmers are a massive part of the industry. It's a cattle city, is Gloucester. Cheltenham's where the races are. It's a very countryside communal area. So when the Prime Minister at the time, Boris Johnson, is doing something dodgy towards us, and she refuses to make a comment, that's an example of ignoring your constituencies. And it needs to be mentioned because...
God, I'll be challenging the boss. What the fuck?
But that's the point, you can't. That's the point, you can't. There is no recall mechanism unless she's told by Parliament she's thrown out for 10 days. That is the fucking problem, Chris. One of our most significant thresholds that we have is our inability to hold our MPs accountable. Because if we did, a lot of the so-called corruption that the far left and the left like to mention would vanish. There's just no way anyone would do it. Knowing that you could be recalled, even with 60% of the British population getting together, you fuck around, you will find out. If there's a petition that says, I want... Let's take Siobhan Bailey as an example, her ignoring Boris Johnson. If we had direct representation with a robust mechanism to recall, I genuinely feel she would be far more nervous. She'd make far more effort to communicate with her constituents, and she would have to stand up and question her Prime Minister. Now, that was dangerous back then, because Boris Johnson was a right fucking man-child. He still is a man-child, let's be quite frank about it, and I'm glad we got rid of him. He was ravingly incompetent. As a Prime Minister, and probably one of the, outside of Liz Truss, I think he was the next worst mob. The head of lettuce! That's how long she fucking lasted.
Did she actually even manage to do anything while she was in
No. She was fired too quickly. Her whole thing was to build her reform system, get it revolted by the market. That's why they say call it a 𝐾𝐨𝐧'𝐭. It's not used commonly, but when you 𝐾𝐨𝐧 something, it's so bad, you fucked it up so badly, your government is dissolved, that the party removes you knowing it's going to cause problems. It was 𝐾𝐨𝐧'𝐭. And I think that kind of...
And that's no, you didn't just touch a nerve, you touched the heart.
Yeah, the party threw you out. You didn't last the length of time of a head of lettuce. And you don't hear about 𝐾𝐨𝐧 or Liz Truss anymore in politics. And I'm using that as an example of how bad they
retired from politics, didn't they, after
I don't
disasters.
know about 𝐾𝐨𝐧, but Liz Truss has. I think she's pulled out entirely. But we need to reform the system. The public also needs to be educated on how our government runs. And that's a critical factor of why we do our podcast, because quite frankly, a lot of the British public aren't aware of how Britain operates. You don't look into the guts of the British political system. You just like, oh, they're doing a job, they're mostly competent. They're not. That's the thing. When they make legislation, a lot of British politicians don't even know what the fucking legislation they're voting for. They vote along party lines. It's tribalist. Most of them haven't read the document.
That's stupid. That's absolutely stupid.
That's the scary
How can you
thing.
not do your studying homework if you're doing something like that?
If you're voting a law in, you should read it. Quite often they don't. And one of the key factors of that is riders. Now, legal riders are where you insert something. Money. It's all about the money. Riders are when corporations want to add something to a bill to get it passed faster.
So they literally just pay someone to go in there.
And the bureaucrats will add it in. And some riders do get thrown out by the House of Lords. I need to defend the House of Lords to some degree. They're not a totally incompetent body, but they are incompetent to a great deal of a degree. And I think that does need to be touched quite considerably. The political system of our country needs massive reform, not just in tax, economics or sociality, but also the ability to hold our MPs incredibly accountable, because we don't. Britain, we don't. Recognising there is a problem is knowing there is one. Britain, I'm telling you, you don't have control of your own MPs. Once they have left you every 4 to 5 years for election, you have no control over them. And we should. We genuinely should.
We should, yeah.
It's our right to do so. I want to move on to local news here in Gloucestershire. A Brockworth man was pleaded guilty to engaging a 14-year-old girl in sexual activity has appeared in court for sentencing. Hear me out before you say anything. Kane person, aged 21, had previously admitted to 3 accounts of causing a girl aged 13 to 15 to engage in sexual activity and 1 account of engaging in sexual communication with a child. The incident occurred between the 20th of August and the 5th of September in 2023. Persons has initially befriended the victim on Instagram in August 23 after she mistook him for someone she knew. He then began communicating with the girl, who cannot be named for legal reasons. Obviously, she's still a fucking child. Before the encounter, encouraged her to send sexually explicit photographies of himself. He also sent her sexually explicit images of himself. Now, one of the reasons I'm raising this, Britain, is because I need you to understand the very real reality of what I'm about to read. During the sentencing hearing, the victim's mother read a personal statement. I'm not going to go into that. If you want, you can look that up. Apparently, the Gloucester Crown Court last Wednesday, 26th of September, person was given a 22-month prison sentence, suspended for 2 years, and ordered to carry a 200 hours of unpaid work. He was made the subject of a sexual harassment prevention order for 10 years and put on the sex offenders registry only for 10 years. Go.
Just what the fuck? So you're telling me she's the one that actually reached out to him to start off with?
Relatively speaking. She reached out to him, but obviously there are multiple things I want to unpack here. Yeah. First and foremost, a 21-year-old should not be walking free just after signing a couple of documents and doing 200 hours of unpaid work after effectively engaging in sexual activity with a fucking child. Okay? No. That motherfucker should be in jail. Okay? I don't care if that's a deeply conservative side of me. We need to clamp down on this behaviour. Okay? This is the type of behaviour that runs rampant. Next minute we know we have Balenciaga with fucking choke chains on teddy bears and children wearing pornography material. Yeah? We're going to get there. And I know people say I'm overreacting, but we only have to point to the fashion industry pushing these lines forward. And next minute, you know, people will be talking about maps being a fucking part of the British sexual community. And I know this makes the gay community angry because I speak to a lot of gay friends, and one of them says, quote unquote, I'd take a shovel to anyone who wants to call himself a map and a part of the LGBT community. I will take a shovel and bury the fucker. That's a gay man telling that to me.
That's a bold statement right there.
A gay man says, I will buy a fucking shovel, I will call you, Sean, you will show me where we will bury the bastard. So even the gay community, the bulk of them, which I've got nothing but mad love for, they reject the idea of maps. But the sentencing has an impact on all parts of our society. The Gloucester Crown Court gave this man a 22-month prison sentence, which was suspended for 2 years.
That means he won't see
a day in prison.
See a day in prison. Seeing as the fact I'm going the fact that it's actually proven.
He was proven.
Proven to be doing sexual activities with an underage.
13 to 15-year-old.
Yeah, and I'm going to say underage is under 16.
Yeah.
That's no.
You see, now this isn't the same as don't treat me as some kind of old fucking rocking horse in my 40s. If this was a 16-year-old with a 17-year-old, meh, you know what I'm saying? That's
above league, as I call, classified as being a minor.
Yeah. But or say 15 and a half. Say 15 and a half. Her boyfriend's 17. That's young love. Okay, you can get. He's 21. She was 13.
He clearly knew that she was underage.
Fucking absolutely. And he didn't serve a day in fucking prison. I've got a fucking problem with that. I don't give a shit. He's had to sign the prevent order and the sexual offence order. What happens when the next time, what's the Crown Court going to do when this man, Mr. Parson, whose picture looks like he's a fucking, he looks like a nonce. I don't give a shit if that's politically correct or not. He looks like a nonce. Let's say he captures, mistreats, grapes, and murders the next young girl. How the fuck is the Crown Court going to look at that? You had the chance to put that man in jail, and you didn't. You've made the Gloucestershire daughters vulnerable because that man is walking around in public. These men don't care about prevent orders. These men don't care about 200 hours of community service or $4,000 in damages. They don't give a shit.
To them, that's a slap on the wrist.
That is just a slap on the wrist. They need to go the fuck down permanently. I've got no time. He's a paedophile, okay? And I know that's politically incorrect to say it. He is a fucking paedophile.
That's the definition for fucking paedophile.
Literally. She's 13, he's 21 going on 22. The sentencing system is a fucking joke here in the United Kingdom. Especially when it comes to the Gloucester Crown Court. And I know people are going to object to us actually highlighting this, but it needs to be fucking highlighted. The Gloucester Crown Court should be hanging their fucking head in embarrassment. It's beyond disgusting.
How on earth did they get to that? Literally, if he was proven guilty, that's immediate sentencing.
In her letter, in the mother's letter, we have watched our daughter go from a young 13-year-old girl, enjoying being with her friends, setting into life at secondary school, to one who has lost her self-confidence, feeling of shame and humiliation. She has suffered and continues to suffer from sleepless nights, nightmares, panic attacks. She is fearful of being alone, and she carries a deep sense of shame and refuses to be around her friends and community. He's destroyed that fucking child's life. Maybe it's politically incorrect. Maybe it's the Muslim in me. Hang the motherfucker. Okay, I know British law don't know. Hang the motherfucker. Or at least put him away for 10 years.
Hanging is a mercy.
Fucking hang the bastard. I know. Maybe I'm a bit too Muslim in this matter. And I do, Britain. And when grooming gangs are raised in this conversation, and I know I want to touch base with this briefly, we Muslims tell you how we want to deal with it. Your liberal law system doesn't let us. If the Rotherham gangs, and I know I don't really want to touch on this, were given over to the British Ummah, we'd hang the fuckers from the trees. No fucking Pakistani boy would ever look at another white girl the same way if you'd given them to the Muslim community. Because the motherfuckers would have been strung up. The lot of them. No questions. I'm telling you. And Muslim elders have said this to me, Chris. Muslim elders have said if they'd given them to us, you would never see another problem.
That's very much, you've done wrong, there's no backing out.
Yeah, you're gone. Because it has a direct effect on the Muslim community. And I have to defend this position because we are constantly being railed on this conversation. Because of the disgusting behaviour of uneducated, un-Islamic behaviour that goes on. In Islam, you cannot engage in external relationships with anyone but your wife. Yeah, that's it. It's the end of conversation. So they're already breaking some of the greatest taboos in the Muslim world. And this is why, if they had been given to us, we would have dealt with the situation. Now, I know I'm touching base on that, but it's because it's a local news that it's only just recently come up. That these are the problems that we have in a society that refuses to deal with them.
See, I'll go a more harsher way of punishment.
Go on.
He gets jail sentence and he gets beaten every day.
The Americans call them chomos. The things they do to chomos are horrific in America. If any of you have ever seen if you want to go down that road and have a look at what the Americans do to chomos.
I'll certainly discourage anyone doing it, won't you?
Yeah, the simple reality is that we need a better justification of our justice system. And I fundamentally have a real problem with him only receiving a sexual harassment prevent order for 10 years.
It should be beyond bars.
A sex offenders registered for 10 years. He's only on there for 10 years.
No, that should be life.
And 5-year restraining order was put on place, and he's to pay for $4,700. I'm sorry, the 22-month sentence suspended and 200 hours of unpaid work. That's what society has given him. Yeah? I don't care if it's only explicit items. We need to come hard down on these fucking kiddie fiddlers. Let's call them what they are. I know that's politically incorrect. I'm going to have to label warnings to the front of this video. I'm being deeply, deeply unprofessional anymore. One more item I think we're going to touch base with today. US President Donald Trump and his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin are expecting to speak this weekend coming. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff said that as Russia has yet to agree to a US brokered ceasefire proposed with Ukraine. The two presidents are going to have a really good and positive discussion this week, Witkoff said in an interview with the CNN on Sunday. I don't know if we're going to have a peace agreement, but I want one. In this regard, this is one, and I'm not a fan of Donald Trump. I don't like the man at all, to be honest. But I think this is a really positive thing. I think we need an end to the Ukrainian-Russian conflict.
We do.
Because Russia has fucking nukes. Okay, I can't keep stressing that. And all the European politicians who say, we should defend Ukraine's democratic... No, motherfuckers, okay? Most of you are cashing checks that France and Britain are about to fucking cash for you. Because America's up sticks and fucked off. America isn't cashing your checks.
No,
okay?
we are.
We are, okay? And I don't want a fucking war with Russia. No. Because it's me and him who are going to have to go fucking fight it.
I'm saying, yeah, it will be me and him have to go fight it. Because I'm sorry, the younger generation. But from the videos I've seen... How the fuck are you going to stand on the front lines? With you in a, I don't need to do this. Oh, fuck off. Pick up a gun and get to work.
oh my God, Chris. That's just, yeah. You know what I'm saying? So Europe, all of you running your mouth, you're not the ones that are going to have to come cash those checks. Okay, it'll be France, it'll be Britain, it'll be Poland. Germany still hasn't updated its military yet. And they're going to. They're talking about building more finances towards their industries and militaries, but they're not at the moment. Do you know what I'm saying? If these
they're probably sitting all out the books to get it sorted, aren't they?
If these peace talks collapse,
they need to militarise fast.
Because it's Britain, France, and Poland that are going to carry the fucking odorous bag.
If Germany militarises at the same time,
then we have a fight. Then it's a fight.
I don't think we have a fight. I think we have a fucking victory. What are you on?
Not with nukes. We might be able to eject Russia from maybe parts of Ukraine, maybe not.
You don't want to know as soon as nukes are involved, that's it, everyone's going to go fuck it and just destroy each other.
I don't know. You see, this is the funny thing. When we talk about nuclear warfare, everyone thinks that mad is the optimal position. Not necessarily. I don't believe China, who believes in the eternal capacity of the Middle Kingdom, will fire a nuclear weapon in initiating or activating a nuclear weapon. They have enough population that they could say they can have a wait and see kind of approach, and a lot of their population aren't in their urban centres. So I don't necessarily agree everyone will go nuclear. I don't think the Europeans will, too terrified of what their populations will do afterwards. Because remember, most of Europe is relatively democratic. We might, as the English, because the English knows one nuke, we're fucked. So if Moscow fires a nuke at London, Britain's done. The fallout will kill our farmland. Remember, our whole country is less than 350 miles.
I was going to say, literally, if they fire a nuke on London, we'll literally go, fuck you, we'll take you out.
But the problem being is that the radiation effect will kill the entire United Kingdom. We are not big enough a country that more than one, maybe two nukes will do our country over. So
the only way the British are going to survive is how fast can you get off the bloody island.
That's when you talk about nuclear warfare, it is a horrific conversation to have, but it is a conversation that realistically there is no future for Britain. There might be for France, there might be for Germany, depending on where the nukes land. There might be for Spain and Italy, depending on modern technology. Britain is a very compact country. Remember, I've said in our previous podcast that we only live on 8% of our island. That's mostly around the coast.
Yes, strategic nuking, you wipe out Britain.
Yeah. We don't have the luxury of being able to say, half of China will still be standing. Because it won't be. Half of Britain won't be standing. The nuclear radiation will take out all of our farmlands. We will not be able to feed our populations. Even if me and Chris and you lot and the whole bulk of the island aren't in the blast radius, the island is uninhabitable. We will turn into Chernobyl on a country scale. And Russia doesn't even need to fire a big nuke like that. So if there is a armed...
How much if they fired a big nuke?
Yeah, the Tsars can't. They can't tend to put the Tsars in. They can't move the Tsars anymore because they haven't got the bombers to move them. That's one of Russia's biggest problems. I was doing a little bit of reading about it. The biggest of their nuclear weapons. It's a drop bomb. It's a massive fucking drop. It's not a cruise missile. It's a drop bomb. I don't know if they've moved them into cruise missiles. I don't think they have. Forgive me, Russian viewers, if I'm wrong. But their biggest fucking bomb used to sit in one of their specialist bombers, and they don't build the bomber anymore. So that's a 500 megaton. That motherfucker is huge. You drop that on London, you take out France, England, Ireland, and half of Germany in the radiation field. Not just London's gone. We know London's gone, but the radiation fallback takes out 3 or 4 other countries.
The radiation fallback. That place literally means if they drop that bomb on London, London's gone. We're in the inner circumference of the radiation thing.
No. The 500 megaton bomb would take out London, multiple other cities around it. We in Gloucestershire would feel you know when the windows break, you see that thing. We would feel that. If a Tsar dropped in London, Gloucester would feel it. Yeah, that's how fucking big the Tsar bomb is. It's enormous. Fucking largest nuclear weapon on the planet. I'm not sure, and I might be wrong about this, that they can mount them on missiles at the moment. From what the article I was reading years ago, they tended to use them as basically drop bombs. It was a fucking huge thing. You drop it. You will take out... That bomb gets dropped on London, you've taken out 4 countries. The radiation will kill France, Denmark... half of Germany.
I would say if it take out France, it'll more likely take out parts of Spain, and it just
No. The lingering effect because the Spanish mountains, the way radiation works. Remember, there's a mountain range between Spain and France, so Spain would be safe. Spain would be. It get dropped in London, and everyone's running to Spain.
I'll be running to friggin' Africa. What are you on?
No, South America. If you're going to retreat from a nuclear war, South America's the place to go. They're the last place anyone's looking at. Everybody's ignoring South America.
Why are they ignoring South America for?
Because South America has no nuclear strategic value and it has very little military attackable ability. The South Americans have deliberately avoided having large armies or threatening other parts of the world. They make a point.
So they're the biggest
neutral area in the world.
Fucking out. Yeah, straight there.
Brazil, Argentina, they would become the newest great powers because the populations would all move there. Because Europe would be dead. Asia might suffer horrible attacks. Russia's gone. People say America, Russia. No, they're dead. Okay, they're the 2 countries that are being nuked. And everyone in between us. And I don't think China would necessarily get involved. I think in the modern kind of sense, China would would weigh up the options and probably try to sit on the fence or stay out. I definitely believe that India and Pakistan would exchange. That would happen. With the amount of hatred and grief between the 2 of them. The Indian subcontinent would suffer horrifically. And South America would become the new central part of world leadership. The world would shift to South America. But if a Tsar was dropped in London, we wouldn't make it. I'm telling you that now.
No, because if we weren't caught in the blast, the first radiation will be gone.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. The blast radius, the actual windows, they would go. And the radiation would hit Gloucester probably within 20 minutes.
Yeah, and that's the first lethal dose.
Yeah, that's the big dose. Yeah. Because that's such a fucking huge bomb.
That's I call the most intoxicated part.
The nukes that we believe that we can survive are mostly the cruise missiles that are designed for strategical striking, but not the American and Russian ones. They're fucking huge. Most of them are around between 100 to 200 megatons. Any one of them hits London, we're fucked as well. But if a Tsar was to be dropped in London, the fucking Europeans are fucked. Not just us. Okay, that's one of them kind of bang bangs and you're all gone. And the Russians built that.
It's one of those ones, you drop that's it, world order changes.
Yeah, absolutely. The human race would suffer horrific casualty levels in a nuclear exchange. No one should ever expect that
I reckon that's a good half the population of the world gone.
Probably more. Probably more. When you take out, remember how much food Europe supplies.
Yeah.
Remember, India supplies 20% of the human race. And India and Pakistan are going to exchange. We know this is going to happen. Once mad has happened, once Russia and America are firing at each other, someone, either in Delhi or in Islamabad, are going to fire at each other. We don't know who the fuck it will be. Someone will pull the trigger.
One starts, the other one follows.
Yeah. So we're losing 20% of the human race is farming in India. We're losing Europe's entire industrial and economical centres. America and Russia are the major powers of the world. They're gone. Okay? They're gone. They're just
so we're literally
gone.
So
we have part of Asia, Australia, much of the Pacific, and South America. That will be what's left of the human race. And South America can barely feed itself now. Wait until all the immigrants arrive.
Fuck.
Yeah. We'll lose more than half. I would say if the contingencies in South America and the rest of the world are in place and everyone helps everyone, we'll drop to about 1 billion in a nuclear war.
Damn.
Entire parts of and that's if we've got our shit together. That's if the limitation is just the West versus Russia. And we're not including China in the car exchange, and India and Pakistan are only just mildly exchanging nukes because they've got a couple of crazy people and they stop quite soon and they don't wipe each other out. Or we're fucked beyond fucked. It could drop to 1 billion people. It could. That's a good scenario, Chris, and I need to make that clear.
That's a best scenario.
The bad scenario is human race is dead. That's a very real reality. Nuclear war can kill humanity. It can kill the human race. It is the only fucking thing that we've invented that can annihilate our species. We have a weapon, the splitting of the atom will kill our... So as you've seen, we've gone through quite a bit today. The US President and Donald Trump and Russia's counterpart talk about peace. We've talked about the Keir Starmer getting rid of the NHS. That's a good thing. Keep up the good work. You fucking useless cunt.
Bear in mind, that's the bureaucratical side of the NHS, not the entire thing.
Yeah, that's the bureaucrat, the ones we need to get rid of. The local news, if you want to hear that, definitely hear the part of that. Parliamentary reform, and as Chris has said from his own part of the podcast, referring towards Rachel Reeves' fuck-ups, which the woman should be, Rachel Reeves, the queen of fuck-ups. But as always, this has been a pleasure. We're glad to have had our 13th podcast. This is Chris, I'm Sean, Yahya, or John, depends on who the fuck you're asking. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you for watching us if you've got this far to the end of podcast 13.